All right, hey, what's up, everybody? Mike Lindsley back with you for 9 minutes with me on IGTV, Facebook, and YouTube. We are presented by Empower Federal Credit Union, the Vinciguerra Consulting Group, and Bryant and Stratton College. Make sure you go ahead and log on to bryantstratton.edu today. Classes are starting soon, 2- and 4-year degrees. It's just a fantastic time to be a Bobcat. Bryant and Stratton College is, in fact, the official college of the ML Sports Platter. So lately, the word Dynasty has been thrown around in a million articles that I've been reading. I just went on the New York Post and read several different articles. Larry Brooks was talking about how the Rangers could be a dynasty, and the whole dynasty thing, I think, mostly has been talked about because of Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Usually, as Mike Vaccaro brilliantly pointed out in the New York Post, as usual, dynasties do in fact come out of nowhere. Look at the Red Auerbach, Bill Russell-led Celtics when Boston traded for Red Auerbach. Take a look at the Derek Jeter, Joe Torre Yankees, a team that won the wild card in '95, but you could have never imagined that team becoming a dynasty. And then voila, everything changes. They trade for Tino Martinez, shipping Russ Davis and Sterling Hitchcock out. They win every other trade. Mariano Rivera becomes a star. His fastball goes up 5 miles an hour. Derek Jeter gets drafted. They get Joe Torre, and off and running they go, winning 4 World Series in 5 years. And going back to the World Series, of course, in 2001 and 2003, the New England Patriots came wildly out of nowhere. Tom Brady was a solid player at Michigan, but he battled with Drew Henson. Next thing you know, Drew Bledsoe gets hit on the sideline by Mo Lewis. Voila, Brady goes in. The 6th-round pick becomes arguably the greatest quarterback of all time with Bill Belichick. But the writing is certainly on the wall with the Kansas City Chiefs. They've got the absolute MO combination with Andy Reid at head coach, and Patty Mahomes at quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback right now in the NFL. He's the face of the NFL, and he's the best player in the NFL. And Andy Reid is a guy who probably was going to go to the Hall of Fame even without a Super Bowl. Now he's etched in stone in Canton, and it looks as though now when you sign, Patrick Mahomes to that long-term deal, you've got Andy Reid, you've got Chris Jones locked up on the defensive side. Kansas City's front office seems to be incredibly smart. You've got a lot of players under control until 2021, 2022ish, including Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. How this is going to work, though, for Kansas City is basically they have to own the target on their back, number one. Number two, Patrick Mahomes and the roster, really, they have to stay healthy. That's the number one thing. And number three, the NFL, you're getting challenged by everything around you. The NFL is basically bookended and built for you to go worst to first and first to worst. It's bookended for you not to be a dynasty, especially with the New England Patriots, almost at this point, when you look back, making it look easy, winning those 6 Super Bowls and going to 9 of them in 20 years with Brady and Bill Belichick. But it is quite possible that the Kansas City Chiefs will win at least 2, maybe 3 in terms of championships here. It's possible, but I think it's very dangerous to throw around the word dynasty no matter what. Now look, as I've mentioned, the Kansas City Chiefs have more than every other franchise currently in professional sports, just based on what the needs are. They've got 3, they're covered. They're 3 for 3 in what you need to be a Super Bowl contender / winner. And in every year, just contender to win a division, make the playoffs, challenge for the crown, etc. They got the front office, they got the head coach, and they got the quarterback. They're built better than anybody in professional sports right now. But I caution you, remember 4 years ago, the Chicago Cubs, they went to the World Series, won the World Series for the first time since 1908, built by Theo Epstein, right? He knew a thing or two about it in Boston. He breaks the curse there, then he breaks the curse in Chicago. And what happened in the Windy City? What happened nationally in terms of the Cubs' perception? They went from the lovable losers and all those awful losses in the postseason, '84, Steve Bartman, etc., in 2003, grabbing trying to grab the ball, getting in the way of Moise Alou. Chicago Cubs were labeled dynasty. They went from lovable losers to dynasty. Now look, just after that, the Cubs, it hasn't been all bad for the Chicago Cubs. They've gone to the playoffs a couple of times. They've kept some of the core players from that 2016 team, but they're nowhere near a dynasty in baseball, despite the fact that they have heavy revenue sharing and a lot of money spread out more than people think. I know it's just easy to point towards Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox, etc., with the big payroll and all the rest, but it's not quite like that if you look deeper deeper into the books, you know more about the game and the finances and the revenue sharing and the pot of money that goes into the whole bowl when teams go over the luxury tax. But the Chicago Cubs making the playoffs a couple times, nowhere near a dynasty. And think about what they had in 2016. You went, from John Lester to Jake Arrieta. You had big time bullpen arms coming out. You had franchise players at the main positions. You went from a Kyle Schwarber and a Chris Bryant and a potpourri of players on that team who you looked at and said, hey, maybe this is it. Maybe they'll win a couple, 2, 3, maybe even form a little bit of a mini dynasty. Well, guess what? As we fast forward to 2020, they don't even have the same manager in Joe Madden, and they have tried to figure out who to keep, who not to keep. Addison Russell, there was the ups and downs with him all over the place. Soler, I mean, think about all the players they had for that core group, and Chris Bryant, an MVP-type guy, year in and year out at third base. They immediately after, just a couple years later, started talking about how maybe he isn't a third baseman and how you have to maybe mix and match and play him a little bit in the outfield. The point is, just because a team wins one championship, you can't just throw out the dynasty word. It takes a ton to become a dynasty. You need a lot of luck. You need to be built the right way, and you need the minds to stay with it as they go to continue to make smart moves. You got to stay healthy. And I think another thing, too, is that a lot of the players in today's day and age with money and a lot of the factors that go on with the front office, etc., you've got to have cohesion. You've got to have a lot of chemistry between not just the players, but the players and the manager, the players and the head coach and the staff and the front office. They've got to have chemistry all on down the line as well. And I think right now, the KC Chiefs do have that, but is it going to be along the same lines of Joe Torre and Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera and Bernie Williams and, the front office of Gene Michael, Bob Watson, and into Brian Cashman into the late 90s, early 2000s? I don't know. I mean, when you think back to what the Yankees did in baseball and what the Patriots have done the last 20 years before Brady leaving to Tampa Bay, it's mind-boggling. I mean, when you think about how it worked and Bill Belichick knowing the ceiling of players and then out they go and then he brings other people in and, Randy Moss not working in one spot. He works for the Patriots for a year and then off he goes. And Corey Dillon and Lawrence Maroney, those guys weren't going to work. They worked in New England for a little bit of time and then Belichick gets them out of there. Belichick's basically running the franchise. He has run the franchise since Scott Pioli left for Kansas City back when he was GM for New England and Kansas City. But you think about, Gronk, Aaron Hernandez, the whole tandem there, Aaron Hernandez and the murder cases, and then they ended up getting past that. They bring in the Amendolas and the Edelmans, and they know exactly who to pick and choose on defense and captains of their college and high school teams, and all of it mixes together, and then they're led by the ownership of Kraft and the coaching of Belichick and the quarterbacking of Brady. And the same exact thing, like I mentioned, kind of happened for the New York Yankees. But you need luck, you need chemistry, and oh, by the way, here's another thing you also need. You need absolute egos to stay in check. I mean, we just got done watching The Last Dance 10-part series. I've watched it twice over again, by the way, and Michael Jordan was burned out after 3 championships. They went into 97, 98 with Jerry Krause, the GM, basically saying it doesn't matter how many games you win. You go 82-0, Phil Jackson's out of here. And then that caused Michael Jordan to go, screw you. I'm not playing here unless Phil Jackson is here. And then Jerry Krause and Scottie Pippen were also fighting in terms of contracts, and he was being underappreciated. Well, Jerry Krause was before that going out and trying to get Tony Kukoc from Croatia. So all these things are very, very important and very, very incredible when you think about how dynasties work coming out of nowhere and how they form and how they stay together at the top while the bullseye is on their back. And right now, there is no team better suited to be a dynasty than the Kansas City Chiefs, but also because all the factors I mentioned to fall quickly like the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm Mike Lindsley, 9 Minutes with Me, IGTV, Facebook, YouTube. Get me on Twitter. Get me on Instagram, of course. Get my podcast where major podcast platforms are found on your smartphone device. It's the ML Sports Platter. Download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review. You will hear guests like Mark Teixeira, Kel Ripken Jr., and Bob Costas. Thanks for listening again. And as I always tell you, when they come back in full, enjoy the games.